We begin today on a somewhat overcast morning, passing by what, as near as I can tell, is the actual narrowboat Reckless that Guy built. Guy Martin and his friend Mark Davies were a couple of guys that in 2011 did a 6-episode series on, I believe it was BBC, where they took an old, beaten-up, gutted narrowboat and rebuilt it into something much nicer and livable. And that appears to be it. Coming up here on the right is the sister boat to the one that I'm in. From the same hire firm. They have two of this style, this size. I have one of them. Right up here, that is the second. Was not expecting to encounter it on this trip, but I passed it yesterday, and there it is again. And apologies for the water on the lens. I'm afraid I didn't know it was happening until I was reviewing this footage. You do need to maintain your canal, otherwise this is the kind of thing that happens. It gets filled in with grasses and reeds. What used to be wide enough for a couple of wide beams is now only wide enough for one wide beam or two standard narrowboats. Gotta take care of your canal. Fortunately, the water on the lens doesn't obscure the view too much, and it eventually clears up. Any more duckies? A bit of camping. That would be an interesting way to see the country, I would agree, but between narrowboating and camping, I think I'd have to pick narrowboating. Got a boat here in the process of getting craned in or out of the canal. Based on the condition of the hull, I would guess it's being craned out, possibly for cleaning and blacking. Give it a bit more life in the canal. Actually, the boat up on the crane looks like it was being inspected. Perhaps it's about to be sold. Of all the water I collected during this trip, the water from this water point was the tastiest. So much so, I made sure to stop by here on the way back to fill not only the boat, but 2 of my water bottles. see some wild colors out on the canal. Never thought I'd see purple and orange together. Or is that maybe more of a wine or a plum? This here is a bit more the color scheme I would go for. A bit of forest green, a bit of meadow green. The red stripes I could take or leave, but otherwise, I like it. Got a bumblebee on the canal. I do enjoy the fantastic variety of boats you find on the canals. I have come to realize there are two times that I enjoy narrowboating. I enjoy the time that I am cruising, and I enjoy the time I am moored up. So on the left, as you can see, is the rail line. Ahead of me is the canal, and over there is the M1 motorway. Rather impressive to see hundreds of years of transportation options right next to each other, and all of them still in use. Up ahead there is the first lock of the Buckby flight. It's actually lock 13. We saw me come down those a few days ago. I'm about to go back up. 7 locks today until I reach Napton Junction, at which point I will turn left back towards Bronson. As I was prepping this lock to carry me up, pulling up behind me were a pair of veteran narrowboaters. When I explained to them that I was running solo and I was still learning how to do this, their crew said, "Tell you what, go ahead and get on the boat. I'll handle the locks," while the skipper drove their boat up through. We ended up pairing up, going up the locks from here all the way to the top, and boy did it make the trip easier. The conversation with the skipper of the other boat was also quite excellent as we rowed up the locks. It takes a few moments, a couple of minutes to get up, and I tell you, I learned a lot talking to them and the conversations we had. This gate is already open because that blue boat we just passed on the right had come out of the lock, saw that we were coming up, so left the lock open for us to enter. Made it easier and took us less time to get into the lock and up to the top. As I was approaching, I could see the water cavorting about. That told me that another boat was coming down in the lock, so I signaled to the crew to let them know that the boat was coming. That way he could leave the gates of the lock we just came out of open, because as you can see, they left the gates open for us. This makes it easier for each of us to get into the lock and continue on. Got quite a lot of water flowing over the top of those lock gates. I wonder why. Here I learned why you don't moor up so close to the lock. As the water was coming down, it created a suction that pulled the boat forward. So much so that 2 of the 3 cords on the line tying the boat to the side snapped, and it was a mad scramble to hold onto the boat so it didn't go rocketing around the pound. We are joining me a little bit later today. It is actually about 7:15, 7:30. Not because I was cruising all day, but but it just had a fantastic opportunity. So, and I'll mention, this will be in some of the vlog, but I arrived at the first of the Buckby lock flight. and I started getting it ready and to go up. No, there was nobody else on the lock mooring. So I get there, I tie up with the center line. I head up to the lock. It's full. I'm like, okay, it looks like somebody went up the locks, and I'm gonna have a day of doing the locks. So I start lowering the lock, and as I'm doing this, I notice another boat more up on the lock landing behind me. I'm like, ooh. And then I see this gentleman walking up to the lock with his windlass, and I'm like, hey. And when he arrives, we greet and start chatting. It turns out he and his wife are going up the locks as well. I'm like, this is fantastic. But I'm like, you know what? I've never really gone through the locks. I mean, like one lock with another boat, and don't really know the right, etiquette, how to do it. So I figure, you know what? Better to come out to him right away and say, here's the deal. I'm solo. It's my first time cruising solo. I've only had the boat, the hire boat for a few days. Not used to going through locks with another person. He's like, you know what? Tell you what, you stay on the boat. I'll handle the mechanism. You can travel up with, his wife was going to be operating their boat, and you just, we'll do it that way. I'm like, awesome. I mean, sure, I have no problem operating the locks, and I've got it figured out fairly well. But it is always, especially because these are the double wide locks, so they're wide enough for the wide beam, which is twice the width of a typical narrowboat, or for two narrowboats to go in together. And my boat's so tiny it gets dwarfed, and I still haven't had a chance to get a picture of it in one of the double locks. Maybe tomorrow when I'm going down the Braunston flight, I'll get a picture. But it was just so fantastically convenient that they arrived, and it made going up the locks so much easier. I mean, I helped out where I could, but it was typically, and part of what helped is as we were going up, we encountered a few boats coming down. So there was one point where they, saw us coming, and they left the lock open for us, so we were able to pull in. That happened a couple of times, and at one point, actually on a couple of locks, as we were pulling in, some other people arrived, and they operated a lot of the mechanism to help us get through. So we got through the locks in about 2.5 hours, which, according to the gentleman who was doing most of the work, it was a bit slow. But at the same time, we were kind of taking our time. We did have a lot of locks set against us. We had like 2 of the 7 locks. There's probably 2. I think there was only 2 that were in our favor, as in somebody had just come down or was coming down when we arrived. But I think the rest of them, up until a point, were against us, or were so leaky that we had to do a lot of draining once we got to the lock. So we lost a fair bit of time there. Because they're double wide locks, it takes longer for them to raise and drain, especially when they're empty, and you got to get the water level down. So, but we made it up the flight of locks and had fantastic conversation with the lady who was operating the other boat, because we were often in the lock together, going up. And the stern, we're both driving from the stern, and they were near each other. So just learned a ton, I got to say, which is one of the great things about being a perpetual tourist is I inspire, because of my American accent, I inspire conversation where people want to converse with me, which I welcome. But one of the things that you hear is people on the canals are just so friendly, and you kind of gotta help each other out, because the situation that you're in, especially if you live on the canals, you're going to be in a situation where you need somebody else's help. So you're going to help other people. It's just the way it works. So anyway, so we come up the locks, and as we're nearing the top, she says to me, tell you what, follow me out. There's this fantastic place to moor up, and it's, moor up. And then if you'd like, when it was kind of drizzly and wet, it's like when later on, when the weather improves, because it was forecast to improve, and it did, you can come tour the boat. And I'm like, yeah. And they have a fantastic boat. I didn't want to film because, you don't just record somebody's house. But it's a reverse style, reverse layout. So the bedroom is in the bow and the kitchen is in the back, which I wasn't really sure I liked until I went in one and I realized one of the things I've discovered is when you're on the back of the boat, pooting it along, and you suddenly feel, you know what, I could go for a cup of tea. If your kitchen is in the middle of the boat, you got to moor up to make a cup of tea or get a snack or whatever. You either have to have it with you when you get up there on the back, or you have to moor up. And I mean, it's not, typically it's not too bad. If you got a bit of Armco on the side, you can use a mooring chain or a mooring pin. It's this little hook. I'm using them, but I should get a picture of one to show you. And so it's a faff to get more just to make a cup of tea. But when you have the kitchen in the back, right there, you can just kind of put the boat into tick over or in neutral, and you just get yourself going slow, pointing in a direction where you're not going to clang into anybody, and you can a couple steps down, get the water on in the kettle on the burner, turn it on, back up, check the boat. Then when you hear and then you can get your cup of tea ready, and then when you hear the kettle whistling, you can go down, pour it, and you're there. Or you can go in, grab a quick snack out of the fridge or whatever. So I'm starting to think reverse layout, not a bad idea. I can see the benefit. Now the trick is, can I get reverse layout with a trad stern? You see them frequently with semi-trad, which looks, it's easier if you go look for pictures, but you've got the cruiser stern, which is like a big open deck on the back for like half a dozen people, it seems at times, can hang out while you're operating the boat. Then you have what's called a semi-trad, which looks like a traditional narrowboat, but at the back over the engine, it's open. It's got benches on the side so that people can sit in the benches while the driver is operating the boat. And then you have the traditional, where the engine area is enclosed and you operate, there's basically only enough room back there for one person. That's the person driving the boat. And I like that because I like the idea of having what I call a mud room, where I can come into the engine room and close up the boat, and especially if it's like wet and mucky and I'm all like bleh, I can divest myself of all of my stuff in a room that's kind of built to get mucky and bleh because it's the engine area. And it's meant to, be open when you're cruising, and so it's going to get damp. It's kind of a space for that, and then the rest of the boat can be clean and dry and such. So I'm going to have to do some research to see, can I get a trad stern boat reverse layout? What does that look like? How does that work? So some investigation is going to happen. I can say that because that is really, I'm liking that. Now, it's not impossible to arrange. I've figured out before I set off, make sure I've got a bottle of water, a bit of snack, just kind of some of the stuff that I may want. It's just not, I can't, unless I have an insulated mug, which there is one here. I could theoretically make a cup of a tea and have that back. I'm gonna have to try that tomorrow. Got to remember. But yeah, we'll see. I gotta go look at some boats. A lot of boats. Got to start. What I probably should do is go to like a boat builder and see some of their examples, some of their demos, and find out and talk to them and say, is it possible? Not that I can afford a new boat, because I can't. Probably. I just don't want. For my first one, I just don't want a brand new boat for my first one. I want to get a used one so I can figure out what I like, what I don't, what I want. And that's usually recommended. You start with a used boat. So, but anyway, so we got up the locks, we moored up, and I'm just kind of doing my thing. One of the center lines I had, it started to unravel. I wound up moored up a bit too close to one of the locks when it was draining, and I nearly lost the boat, but saved it. But the line kind of was not usable in its state, so I had to shorten it a bit, and I fixed the end where I had to cut it short. Good thing I always carry a pocket knife, so that it wouldn't unravel. And I still have a center line. It's just a bit short. And when I return the boat, I'll tell here's what happened. I'm learning. But at the same time, that line was fairly worn. There were a lot of at the spot where it snapped. The structural integrity was not great. So it was kind of one of the things where it was meant to happen ish. So anyway, and I was getting ready, and they were going to go for a walk there's a flight of the Watford locks are over here, and it's a staircase, and I should have got pictures, but what happened was they invited me to go on the walk, and that was like a couple hours of just fantastic conversation with people who have been doing this for, narrowboating for over a decade. So great resources of, mining knowledge and information, and just general, chatting. And so we did the walk up and back. It was a couple miles, there, like a mile and a half there, a mile and a half back kind of thing. And then we got back and toured the boat. And after that, had a cup of tea, bit of cake, and just conversation for, hours. I think we moored up at like 2. Yeah. 2:30. Because we started at 11, took us 2.5 hours. Yeah, so I think we moored up at like 1:30, 2 o'clock. And it was like a half hour or so of stuff. And so I just, got done. They're right up there, and I'm here. And it was a fantastic, just, conversation, hanging out with a couple of people that, we're just cruising along and helping out the new guy. And it was fantastic. The downside is I haven't showered yet, so I'm going to go shower in a moment. But it was unsurprisingly a great day, but it was definitely not the day that I was expecting, and I welcome that, and I look forward to, I've only got tomorrow, Friday, and then I return the boat on Saturday, so maybe not as many opportunities to meet other people, but I'm hoping that in future cruising, I have similarly meet some great people, and just have, we'll see. But it was definitely a great day. One of the reasons I came on this was to try to, meet other people and have, learning opportunities and expand my, just opportunities, and it was excellent. So, talk to you later.